Hello, hello. This is Tucker Johnson, and I am with Nimsy Insights. And today we are doing a live pop up event. We are going to be talking about quarterly business reviews. Quarterly business reviews, also known as QBRs, are one of my favorite things to talk about. And I was just talking today with a client of ours at Nimsy Insights, and I have had 3 office hours today. And office hours, for those of you that don't know, at Nimsy are the consulting hours. They're consulting hours that we have with our clients. Our clients get unlimited hours, so they just book time with us. And today I was talking to a gentleman about quarterly business reviews. And I realized this is one of my favorite topics, but it's something that I haven't talked about for a little while. So we're going to dive right into it today, and let's see how far that we can get. But first, just a little bit of information about Nimsy Insights. We are a market research and consulting company primarily focused on the language services industry, but really helping any customers out there that want to go global. More and more, we are working with international, global, well-known brands to help them with their go-to-market strategy, market entry, research, and all of that stuff, localization audits. If you want more information, let us know. Leave a comment. We'll make sure to get back to you on that. But that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about quarterly business reviews. So let's get this music out of here and dive right in, shall we? Let's start where we start with everything, which is Google. And with Google, well, we're not going to go to Google. We're going to go to nimsy.com because I already have some, we already have some published information about this, and it is available, and the full information is available for our clients only. So Nimsy partners, if you have a Nimsy subscription, then that means you have full access to this. And if you are not a Nimsy partner, then don't worry, because I'm going to be presenting it here today. So you get some of that information. So as I'm here at Nimsy Insights, the first thing I'm going to do is just search for QBR. I could go find it by digging through the taxonomy, but our search function is pretty good these days on the website. So I'm going to, I see 2 options here. I see the full report and I see the preview. Since I'm logged in as a Nimsy partner, I'm just going to open the preview here. I'm also going to make sure that we are zoomed in nice and good so that everybody can see it. So here in the quarterly business review full report, let's just take a look at this for a second. I want to make sure that you just see what's in here. We'll scroll down to the, well, I guess there isn't a table of contents. The table of contents is in the preview. But lots of good information in here. It's a full report, lots of data about who's running QBRs, why are people running QBRs, who attends the QBRs from the vendor side, who attends the QBRs from the client side. Great information in here, and of course, as with all Nimsy research, you can download the data, or you can get the data in the Google Sheets yourself. All of the data sources are fully available if you want to go and make your own graphs. I just did a pop-up event, I think last week, about how to use Google Data Studio to make your own graphs, and we were using the Nimsy 100 data as an example there. So if you want to check that out, please go check it out. It should be available on the Nimsy YouTube channel, LinkedIn, all of that stuff. But what I'm interested in this report is right here. I have this old link to an old webinar, which I'm not going to click on because it was done several years ago, and that's what we're doing here today. And I have this right here, which is a sample QBR report. Now, if I click on this, it's going to open up in Google Slides. And I don't like Google Slides. I'm a PowerPoint guy. But it is what it is. This is in Google Slides because it's just very simple. This is just a template. And the idea behind this is both a template and it's a how-to file, essentially, because on each slide we're going to have like how to run each of these sections. But let's start at the beginning, shall we? With let's start with what is a quarterly business review. Why is a quarterly business review who is in a quarterly business review, all of that stuff. So quarterly business reviews, or QBRs, are one of the most powerful tools that you can use to build relationship with your clients or to build relationship with your supply chain, with your vendors. So it goes both ways. QBRs aren't just something that the vendors do and deliver to a client. They aren't just something that a client does and imposes upon the vendor. Or something that a vendor, in an ideal situation, is something that a vendor and a client will work on together. And that's one of the reasons I love them so much, because when you work on something together, you're building trust, you're building a partnership, you're building camaraderie. And it's an excellent relationship builder with a client just before you even start. Just in the mere fact that you are doing a QBR, you're already solidifying that tie, that bond, that working camaraderie that you have with your client. Now, that's before you even start. Let's take a look at what it actually looks like, what's included in a QBR. And we'll start with an agenda. And this is a slide that you should actually have in your QBR. You should have an agenda so that everybody knows exactly what is going to be talked about. But before we even talk about the agenda, and of course I'm not sharing my screen, bam, thank you. Let's see how many people are in the comments. Yeah, so no comments yet. People telling me I'm not sharing my screen, so we're good. But before we get into the actual agenda, let's talk about expectations going into the QBR, because whether you're the vendor, whether you're the client, everybody's going to have certain expectations going into a QBR, and the best QBRs are the ones where those expectations are well aligned before the QBR starts. So although we start with an agenda slide here in the first slide, the agenda itself should not be a surprise to anybody. The agenda itself should be known. There should be no surprises during a QBR, not even on the first slide, not even on the second slide, the agenda slide. Everybody should know exactly what's going to be talked about going into the QBR. What does this look like in practice? If you're on the vendor side, let's just say, and you're working on the QBR deck, and let's say you're doing most of the work, the client's not that involved with it. Sometimes the client chooses to be more involved. Sometimes the client chooses not to be involved at all. And we'll talk about that. We'll get back to that. But if you're on the vendor side and the client's like not that involved and you're doing all of the work on it, then you send the deck beforehand. You send it a few days or preferably like a week beforehand. And you say, hey, here's a draft. This is a draft version of the deck. It's not final yet. It's proposed. And I just want to get your feedback. I want to make sure that there's no surprises. I want to get your feedback. Did I forget anything in here? And that way, the client, your stakeholders, the ones that you care about, really know what to expect when they're going into it. So on the agenda, and we're going to go through each one of these points today. We're going to talk about volumes and finances. We're going to talk about KPIs, what went well, challenges, in other words, what didn't go well, key achievements, more stuff that went well. We're going to talk about action items, setting action items, following up on action items, holding ourselves accountable for action items, and looking forward, which stick around if you're watching this recording for the looking forward, because it is the most important part of the QBR, especially on the vendor side. If you are a vendor, if you're in account management, if you carry a quota, if you're responsible for growing accounts, then you're definitely going to want to stick around and understand what's in that looking forward section. Let's start with volumes and finances here. Volumes and finances is probably the most boring part here. We'll just get right into it. To me, it's the least interesting phase, because you're just dumping data, essentially. You're talking about, here's how many source words we translated for you. If you're on the vendor side, or here's how many target words were translated. Here's some data around how much money was spent, some data around, maybe some cost per word, some metrics, whatever your financial KPIs are. But typically, this can be done in 1 or 2 slides. Put some pretty bar graphs in there. visualizations, visualizations, visualizations. And by visualizations, I don't mean tables. I mean graphs. Graphs are your friends. I look at this as basically just like getting this out of the way. We do this first because we got to talk about it. We got to know how much money we're spending. We got to know how many words we're doing. We got to know what languages those words are in, all of that stuff. But really, that's just to set the scene and kind of provide the context for the rest of the conversation here. And we're going to be getting more and more interesting as we move into KPIs and SLAs. Now, KPIs and SLAs. This is a whole, maybe this will be another pop-up event. What is the difference between a KPI and SLA? I don't want to get into it right now, but essentially with your clients, you should have agreed upon metrics, agreed upon measurable expectations, measurable success criteria that you are tracking and that you are reporting. This is where you're going to put it in the QBR. Now, I say that, but I don't want you to get the impression here that the QBR is the only place that you're reporting on KPIs and SLAs. Maybe 10 years ago, that was okay. Sure, we'll just report every 3 months on how we're doing on quality, and everyone will be happy, and then we'll wait 3 more months. Nowadays, that's not the case anymore. Really, if you're tracking KPIs with your client, I mean, depending upon the maturity and the needs of the program, but kind of the new benchmark to be going for is real-time data reporting, because workflows are becoming more agile, requirements are becoming more and more time sensitive, quick, and people don't want to wait a day, let alone 3 months, to get the vital information that they need to make their business decisions. So, anyways, here's where you're going to report all that stuff in the key performance indicators section of the QBR. Next, getting right into it. What went well? In other words, why are we awesome? So this is an opportunity. If you're on the vendor side, this is an opportunity for you to brag about the things that you are doing well. And you should. But, it's not, this isn't the part to get in and have a sales pitch, right? So maybe brag is not the right word. This is our opportunity to realistically assess the things that have gone right with our client relationship over the last 3 years, over the last 3 months with the client-vendor relationship. So you can call that bragging about yourself, but this isn't a place that no sales pitches here. All right, this is just an honest assessment, because remember, this is a joint effort. We're not just talking about, a relationship includes two parties. It's not the vendor, it's not the client, it's the vendor and the client coming together. So if, in our scenario where it's a vendor working on the QBR, the client's not that engaged in actually putting the QBR deck together, the presentation deck, or going through that whole process. And let me just check. Okay, we're good here. Then it's on you to also call out the contributions of the clients to success, not just the vendor. And likewise, if you're the client putting together this deck, it's it falls upon you to call on the contributions of your vendors, of your supply chain. And this is our opportunity to congratulate each other on things well done. Get specific. Talk not only about what went better, what's going well, but talk about what that means. So, one thing that could go on here is, for example, over the last 3 months, we've had really good communication. And that's not objective. If it were objective, it would be in the KPI section, right? But I could say, what went well? We have really good communication between the client and the vendor, between the two parties. Okay, great. Who cares, right? Why do I care if the client communication is good? Much more interesting would be to say, what went well? We've had really good communication over the last 3 months, and that has reduced the average turnaround time on projects by blah, 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 20%. I don't know, but put it into terms that actually mean something. Don't just talk about, here's why I think we're awesome and you should agree with me. Let's move on to the challenges. Now, of course, we start with what went well, and then we, because that's good. That's just us patting each other on the back. Job well done. Good job, us. Yay. But what went well? That slide is not. It's not interesting. I mean, it feels good, but it's not interesting and it's not useful, frankly. It's not incredibly useful just to talk about what went well, because what's useful is talking about the challenges, what didn't go well. Because here's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And here's where we get into interesting conversations about how we can work together better in the future. And one thing I like to say all the time is that what differentiates different client-vendor relationships, good ones, healthy ones, bad ones, toxic ones, is not how well, quote unquote, they're doing all the time, but rather how the parties react when things aren't going well. And that is what really differentiates service providers, frankly. Because if everything's going well, then it's easy. But when something screws up, are you jumping in and staying focused on the solution and dropping everything and prioritizing and over-communicating to make sure that everyone's at ease and making sure to keep all of your stakeholders up to date and in the loop and bought in? Or are you panicking, right? And if you're panicking, then that's not good. That's not good. And this slide is our opportunity to talk about our challenges in an environment where we're not panicking, because presumably we've had up to 3 months to think about these things by now. Now, we talked about the importance on the achievements, like what went well. I'm talking about the other party. Like this is, and here are some, if I'm a vendor, and then here are some contributions that you, my client, dear client, have also made, and I respect you for that, and I applaud you for that. Little bit different for the challenges, because you don't want to just come out and accuse your clients. I mean, you don't want your clients to get defensive. Likewise, if you're on the client side, you don't want your vendors to get defensive. And here's where I'm going to remind you what we were talking about in the beginning of this live stream, which was that there should be no surprises going into a QBR. There should be no surprises. So if you're going to put something on this slide, especially if it's something that might make the other party look bad, whether that's your vendor or whether that's your client, then they need to know it's here before going into the QBR. Why? Because if there's surprise, people do not react well to surprises, first of all, to being caught off guard. But a lot of times in these QBRs, their bosses are going to be invited to the QBRs. They're going to be sitting in. If not, maybe they're going to be watching the recording afterwards. If not that, maybe this deck is going to be passed around internally. And if there's anything on this deck that makes your stakeholders look bad, even if it's something written, but you explain it in the presentation, still you need to make it clear on the written slide what's going on, because that deck might be shared internally and you don't want to make your stakeholder look bad. But if done right, this is a very important slide to making sure that we're continuously building trust with the client, because trust comes from walking through fire together and not from when everything's going well. Now we're going to talk about key achievements. Now, you might be wondering, what's the difference between key achievements and what do we call it earlier? What went well? They're both kind of bragging about ourselves. And you're right, they are. And I like to use the sandwich method of providing feedback. The sandwich method is, I'm sure there's a better name for it, but this is like a cliche way to provide feedback for managers. You know, managers provide feedback, but it works in a QBR too, which is, so you sandwich the negative feedback between the bun, between the bread of positive feedback. So you start with positive feedback, you put the negative feedback in there, and then you put more positive feedback on top. So what does that look like? The key achievements is, here I would put like larger scale things, I think, rather than like what went well. So if there are any special initiatives that took place throughout the last 3 months, special programs, did you revamp your style guides? Did you roll out a new technology or implement a new automation? You know, these are the type of things that we like to talk. We do a lot of like technology audits, localization program audits, optimization type stuff for mostly for the client side, but also on the vendor side too, where we'll come in and people smarter than me. I do some, but usually it's people smarter than me go in and advise our clients on different automations and integrations, that type of stuff. So that's what I see when I think of this, because I'm so deep into it. Here's where you would put that. You know, if you had just engaged with somebody to like do a RFP, like run an RFP for a new technology, and you vetted different vendors and you selected one and you deployed that. That's the type of stuff that goes on here. Not, I think our communication was good. It's also important, but there's another slide for that. Excuse me while I'm drinking. My throat is getting a little dry. Let's check back on over. I just want to see if there's any comments here. Nope, no comments today. Awesome. We can keep going. And we are going to get into the key achievements. We've been on key achievements here. And just a quick reminder, this, if you are a NIMSY partner, if your company is, it works with NIMSY, and you should have full access to all of our research, and included in the research is this QBR report, www.nimsy.com. Use the search box, search for QBR. It'll take you right here, and you can download this template for yourself. Okay, moving on. Action items from last quarter. This section, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory here. This is where you're going to put your action items from your last QBR. And if this is your first QBR, then presumably you can skip this. Maybe you have some action items from a meeting or something. But you can skip this on your first QBR. But this is super important on the second QBR, because what it does, it shows, hi, Rodrigo. What it does is it shows the client that you mean business. It shows the client that you can hold yourself accountable, essentially. And we got Rodrigo in here. Oh, dear Lord, I need to fix this because those chats are just so small. Rodrigo says, on key achievements, I would link it to what it meant to our clients. Good frickin' point, Rodrigo. That is a good frickin' point. For those of you that can't read that, let's go back to key achievements. So, we talked about that a little bit under what went well. Not only talk about what went well, but talk about what that means in tangible terms. The same principle applies here under key achievements. Who cares if you rolled out a new style guide, to use that example that we had earlier? Who cares? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for my bosses, my executives? What does that mean for the other stakeholders that may or may not be in the room during the actual QBR? Put it into terms that they can understand. Pro tip: money. People understand. The right people, the people that you want to understand. They understand terms of money. They understand terms of efficiency. They understand terms of automation. So thank you, Rodrigo, for bringing up that good point. Also, you remind me of another point I don't think that I made on the challenges, which is on the challenges, don't just list challenges, list the solutions too. So if there's not a solution, you better frickin' propose one during this slide, because no one likes to talk about problems. People like to talk about solutions. So make sure that we're talking about solutions during the challenges. Okay, so action items next quarter. I don't know what we need to talk about here, but let's see what these bullet points say. Yeah, I mean, you just come up with action items. Now, you don't come up with action items on the spot during the QBR. This is not a discussion. This is not a, hey, okay, great QBR, let's come up with some action items. And I say that because that's typically how action items are assigned, like at the end of a meeting. This is not the case during a QBR. During a QBR, you agree upon the action items beforehand, because remember, there's no surprises during the QBR. And of course, remember to be following best practices for action items. They need to be, SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, I think, reasonable, and time-bound. Somebody in the comments, keep me honest on that one. I should really memorize the SMART goals, because every time I try to sound smart and use it as an example, I always forget it. But yeah, best practices on action items, goal setting, and all of that stuff. Looking forward. So let's talk about looking forward, because here, I believe I mentioned at the beginning of the stream here that this is the most important slide in the entire deck. And I firmly believe that, because here is... And it doesn't matter if you're on the vendor side. It doesn't matter if you're on the client side, because it's important for different reasons. And let's talk about both of those. I'm going to start with the vendor side, because this deck is kind of geared towards vendor side. So let's start there. If you're the vendor and you're participating in a QBR, your goal is to walk out of there with more work, essentially. Like, let's be honest. This is what you are there for. This is what you show up to work for, to get more money, more projects. If you want to be, diplomatic about it, then we can say it is your goal to add more and more value to your clients, which is to say that you can charge them more. This is your chance to do it, because this is your chance to say, all right, we've just spent the last 45 minutes talking about our relationship, talking about all the things that are going well, talking about all the things that aren't going well, and then talking about our plans for how we're going to improve that moving forward. So now, let's talk about the future. What's coming down the line? And here's where you use your account management best practices. If you haven't checked out, we have a great course at NIMSY. It's called Account Management for Project Managers. Even a project manager can be a good salesperson. Trust me on that one. I am a project manager, and now I do a lot of selling. But all of those best practices, go take that course, and then we can talk about it. Now, if you are a client, this might it's going to look a little bit different, but it's still important. It's not your goal per se to give your vendors more money, but it should be. It should be your goal to give your vendors more money. It should be your goal to increase your budget. Why? Because you can do more with a bigger budget, and it's a lot easier to build a healthy, competent, connected supply chain than it is to get headcount, interview people, hire people, and build a team in-house. So if on the client side, and every organization is different. I know there's going to be someone in the comments that says, well, actually, and you're right. Before you even say it, let me just tell you, you're right, because every organization is different. But really, if you're on the client side, you're approaching a QBR wondering, how can I set my vendor up for success, let them take more work off my plate, and do so in a way where I'm confident that they're going to be able to deliver quality. so I can get a good sleep at night. That should be your goal. Alrighty. And, first satisfaction call. I think this is something that was added here. This doesn't look like mine. I am guessing that my colleague Inga Bonin has been messing with my PowerPoint or with my Google Slides templates, which is great because this is a really, really, really good point here, which is, and I think this is what this is about. Yeah, so this is essentially asking for a satisfaction call for, let's say, somebody who doesn't necessarily want to run a QBR. So this is a vendor side thing. If as a vendor, because not all clients are going to want to run QBRs. I'm sorry, I'll go back over here. Not all clients are going to want to run QBRs, and that's okay. You know, their time is valuable too. But I always say, if your client doesn't want to run a QBR, then you should do something. I tell people, run a QBR without them. Put together the slide deck, do a recording, send it to them. You can still do something, even if the client doesn't want to participate. And one of those things is running a satisfaction call. And the point here is whether you're running QBRs every 3 months, whether you're running ABRs, annual business reviews, MBRs, monthly business reviews, you need to be checking in with your clients from time to time. You need to understand what are their challenges, what are their needs, how are those needs shifting, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself out of touch with your client's needs and you're going to miss opportunities. You don't want to find out after your client has onboarded a new vendor for Armenian that they did that because maybe you want to offer them Armenian translations. You don't want to find out after the fact that your client has onboarded a vendor for multimedia localization testing because, hey, that's a service that you could provide. Well, your client might not know that about you. Your client might not know that you provide Armenian multimedia, Armenian multimedia testing services. How do you teach them about that? Here, looking forward. This is the slide. This is the part of the QBR where you teach them. This is the part of the QBR where you say, did you know that we also blah, blah, blah. We also offer contingent staffing services. We also offer such and such services. We can do more languages. Did you know that we have a machine translation post-editing workflow? Fill in the blank. It's your organization. But that is where you tell them about it. So and this, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of my slide deck here. So let's bring it on home here, shall we? Quarterly QBR stands for Quarterly Business Review, and it is a tool that can and should be used by both vendors and client-side companies to make sure that they are continuously monitoring the health of their client-vendor relationship. And for those of you that have worked in particularly like large or complex or global localization programs, client-vendor relationship health is incredibly important and affects pretty much all aspects of your program. It affects pretty much all of your KPIs, either indirectly or directly, and more difficult to measure, but I would say also more important, it affects your ability to get a good night's sleep. If you don't have a healthy relationship with your supply chain, if you don't have a healthy relationship with your vendor, with your client, this is the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night. Maybe not you, maybe it's just me. Maybe I take myself too seriously. But yeah, if that's the case, that's the case. So anyways, I think that we're coming to an end here, guys. Welcome to an introduction to running a quarterly business review. This was not prepared ahead of time other than the slide deck, which is 2 years old. I just opened it up for the first time in a long time today talking to somebody. Once again, if you are a NIMSY customer, then a NIMSY partner, then that means you have access to all of our research online. Go use your credentials, log in. Also, you can log in with your credentials. You can access our office hours page where you can book time with anybody here at NIMSY. You can book time with me. You can book time with Chief Researcher Sarah Hickey, Dr. Belen Arguello Garcia, who runs our e-learning. Some excellent activity happening over there. Lots of people signing up, not just to take the courses, but to become professors in NIMSY learning. So if that's something that interests you, reach out, let us know. Questions, comments, please leave them down below, as well as recommendations for upcoming pop-up events like this, because eventually I'm going to run out of ideas, and that would be sad. So help me keep it going, guys. With that, I will wish you a wonderful day, and we will see you soon.